Hey, teeth lovers, welcome to today's episode where we are going to be chatting all about core. And now I know you all have heard that term, right? Whether you're in the gym and they say, keep your core tight, or even if you go maybe to a physical therapist or some type of medical professional, they tell you like keep that core strong or work on strengthening your core. But today we're going to talk about like what does it actually mean? How do we do that? And my number one secret to having a strong core. So let's get ready. And without further ado, here we go. Hey there. Welcome to the Lift for Longevity podcast, where our goal is to build our strongest, healthiest body. We all deserve to feel our best, but since we only get one body, we have to make sure to protect it by moving safely and with purpose to prevent pain, injury, and surgery. I'm your host, Brianne, and I'm a fit pro turned business owner and also a girl mom. I'm obsessed with educating and empowering dental pros on how to take care of their body by training efficiently and building the right muscles to prolong their career. I know you're tired of spending time working out but still dealing with annoying aches and pains, getting rid of your pain temporarily only to have it come right back just a few hours later, or feeling like you never have any energy. You wish there was a long-term solution to get rid of your pain for good. Well, I'm here to give you real-life, actionable steps that you can take today to get rid of your pain, say goodbye to quick fixes, and have energy to live a life that you love. So if you're ready to get stronger, enjoy your life outside the operatory, and have longevity in your career, grab yourself a high-protein snack and let's get to it. All right, so let's talk core. Now, I have a lot of hygienists that express to me, like, my core is really weak. I know I need to strengthen my core, or even if you've, given birth, right? If you've bared children, like that is going to affect our core as well. But long story short, not only is core so essential for our everyday life, but it's very, very important for hygiene as well. And I have a lot of clients that after they start working with me, they just say like, I can sit up straighter for longer. Like it's a noticeable difference. And there's a reason for that. So first I want to dive into like, what are the core muscles, right? Most people think like I do crunches or sit-ups. And this more or less just works like those front abs, those rectus abdominis, and that's not core. Those are just simply ab muscles. And this is one thing that I really, really, really want to get across to all of you listeners is that when you're a hygienist, more often than not, you have a lot of that neck pain, you have tension, right? You have a lot of strain and tight muscles around your neck and head. And when you're going and doing more flexion, like when you're doing crunches and sit-ups, it only exacerbates it. So I honestly want to say, like, kick those to the curb. We don't need to do those. But in addition to the rectus abdominis, we've got our transverse abdominis, right? We got our multifidus. We've got our obliques, right? Internal and external. Our erector spinae, which is actually on our posterior, right? So our core is 360 degrees. So we'll chat more about that later. But even our pelvic floor muscles, right? Those are going to be crucial for our core, as well as our glutes. A lot of people don't realize like your glutes are a big part of your core because we are looking to stabilize and support the pelvis and the spine. So these are all the muscles. There are a couple more, but these are like the nitty gritty that I want to talk about today. So while working all these muscles is essentially the key to building that strong, solid foundation, right? Where we do everything throughout our day. Everything's initiated from our core. However, there's one thing we're overlooking a lot of times in hygiene, and we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. So one thing that I see almost all the time is a tilted pelvis. Now, a lot of times I talked about that lower cross syndrome where your pelvis is anteriorly tilted. And so your core becomes very, very weak. However, a lot of times I also see in hygienists a lateral tilt. So maybe your left hip's higher than your right, it's hiked up, or your right's higher than your left, or vice versa. This is from leaning towards one side regularly while you're working on patients, also known as hygiene hip. I don't know if that's a term, but I've heard it before. So this is what that refers to. And not only that is a lot of us have children, right? And you're always holding your child on one side predominantly, and that's definitely going to throw everything off as well. So when you have a misaligned pelvis, you can't strengthen your core, right? There's a lot of underlying issues that are going on. So I had a lady the other day, she's got a tilted pelvis, right? She's got a lot of that back pain. And what this does is it causes imbalances, right? So there's a ton of muscles, but just to kind of go through a few, there's, your adductors, there's your abductors, the muscles of the hips, your glutes, your erector spinae, the hamstrings, as well as your quadratus lumborum. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, and honestly, these are not even all of the muscles, right? Your TFL is going to be involved, but without just ranting on the science and the anatomy, the problem is that these muscles, depending on how your tilt is, meaning anteriorly, laterally, or sometimes I even see it rotated. But depending on that, it's going to identify like which muscles are tight and overactive. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, my piriformis is so tight. Well, of course, right? It's opposing, it's taking over and doing more jobs than it's supposed to. Same thing with the QL, right? That quadratus lumborum. That muscle is also on overdrive when these imbalances are prevalent, and it leads to back pain, which is, one of the triggers for back pain. But anyways, some of these muscles are very, very tight and some of them are very, very weak, right? And I talk about this all the time in our imbalances, right? Like we need to first assess, okay, how is our pelvis tilted? What muscles are tight? What are weak? And then we have to use corrective exercise to fix it. So we're going to make sure and reduce the tension on those overactive muscles and then go ahead and activate and strengthen those weak muscles to build up that more aligned pelvis, so all the muscles surrounding it are working together. Because if they're not, this is like, I use the analogy like if you're going to build a house, right? I don't build houses, you probably don't either, but everybody knows in order to build a house, right, a humongous structure, whether it's 1 story, 2 story, 3 stories, we need a solid foundation. Otherwise, it's never going to last, it's never going to sustain, it's never going to be strong. And the same thing goes with our bodies. Like I have a lot of hygienists that I talk to too. They're like, I have scoliosis, or one leg's longer than the other. All of these things are indicators of a misaligned pelvis, right? It's very problematic. It's very, very common, but it's so important is an understatement. Like it is so crucial that we identify this first and foremost before doing any type of activity, any type of strengthening or core work or anything. So this is my number one tip to a strong core is going to be make sure that we are working to have an aligned pelvis so that we are ensuring that we are lifting properly and safely to avoid injury. Right? Because a lot of people are already working out like this, and you're just working out the wrong muscles all the time, right? Those overactive muscles become overused more and more and more. The weak just stay weak, and it only progresses and gets worse and leads to MSDs, so on and so forth. So I have one client, she tells me she feels like she's restoring her body. It's almost like we have to take one step back to take 2 steps forward, because if you're not fixing these, like I say, they're only getting worse, and you cannot work out efficiently or optimally when you have these imbalances. Your hips are misaligned, which trickles down to your knees, up to your shoulders, and so on and so forth. Like your whole alignment is off, and this is going to affect posture. And this is why, if you follow me at all, it says that what I do is I help relieve pain and improve posture because it goes hand in hand, right? Anytime you have subpar posture, right, whether it's your rounded shoulders or your tilted pelvis, it's going to affect your muscles and lead to pain and eventually injury and surgery. But basically, with having a anterior tilt, for example, you've got that sway back, you're putting excessive pressure on the lumbar spine, and then you go to work out. Say you're doing a deadlift, or if you're doing a plank, right, and you're not tucking that under, you're just putting excessive pressure on that low back, which is something I see all the time because these imbalances force you to have faulty movement patterns, right? Your body's moving dysfunctionally. And the same thing goes if your pelvis is tilted laterally, then instead of, or in addition to having imbalances between the anterior and the posterior, your imbalances are more so right from the left side to the right side. Like a lot of people have, more pain and tightness in their low back or their glute on their right side or their left side. But regardless, if you are having a misaligned pelvis, your spine is not properly stabilized, it's going to trickle up, right, to your thoracic, to your cervical, and it just affects everything. And I was talking about this the other day on my story because I have one client, a newer client, who does have a tilted pelvis, tons and tons of back pain. I think she's 20 years in, but regardless, that was the only thing that she could identify. I talked to her multiple times and it was always my back, my back, my back. I had her turn to the side. She 100% has upper cross syndrome, right? Forward head and rounded shoulders. She's like, yeah, my upper traps are really, really tight, but her back pain was so prevalent that she didn't even really notice that she had pain because she didn't. She just had tightness. But regardless, this is an example of how everything is connected. Or I have a ton of hygienists that tell me like, oh, I have such bad neck pain or that shoulder blade pain, and they don't pay attention to their pelvis when it's all related. So sometimes your pelvis can trickle up to your rounded shoulders, or your rounded shoulders trickles down to your pelvis. So 9 out of 10 times I see both upper crust and lower crust in hygienists for this reason, right? The spine is not properly stabilized and it's throwing everything above it and below it off. So not only does this affect us physically with pain and tension and tightness, nobody ever talks about how it looks. Our posture doesn't look nice when we're not standing neutral, right? When we have that sway back, we look funny, right? Or if we have forward head and rounded shoulders, right, it looks funny, but it only progresses over time. So we have to first identify and be aware of what's going on in our body, right? Because a lot of times they say like whether you're seated at work or you're standing, you want to keep your hips neutral. Well, you can't if you have a misaligned pelvis. So I think just being aware is first and foremost. And then what we have to do, a lot of times it's just a small sequence of corrective exercises. It's going to be a couple stretching, a couple strengthening. And it doesn't take a lot of time because your body adapts so quickly, but we have to first fix this in order to strengthen, our core and our glutes and build that strong body to improve our posture and have a balanced body. I have a lot of clients that come to me and they say, I just want to have a healthy body. Well, we can't do this without having a body that's properly aligned. So to prolong your career, step number 1 is going to be protecting that spine. And if you're not sure if you are misaligned or if your pelvis is tilted, there are some tests you can do. You can shoot me a message on Instagram. I'm happy to help you identify it. But make sure you don't neglect this so that we can work on fixing this. And then we can go on to strengthening our core and building that nice, strong body so that we have longevity in our career and that we're able to move functionally and freely without injury or having to have surgery down the road. So I hope this was helpful. Please align that spine, and I will catch you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening in today. I hope you got a takeaway from this episode. And if you did, would you be so kind to share it with another dental pro you think would benefit from it? I know you love learning, and chances are that they do too. Also, I would love to connect with you on Instagram, so go ahead and head over to the Lift for Longevity podcast page or follow me at Built by Brianne. If you shoot me a message saying hello, I will personally respond because I love chatting with dental pros. Before you go, though, I want to let you know that I appreciate you and what you do, and I hope to chat soon. Until next time, stay strong.